Hello and welcome back, and this is going to be the final video here on the channel covering the Storaxa Kickstarter NAS. Now, I say it's the final video. There may be a video somewhere down the line, or maybe an article with further updates long beyond what looks like the close and the end of this campaign, but right now our monthly updates that we've been doing for more than a year, this is going to be the last one. This video serves as kind of a summary of everything that's gone right and unfortunately everything that's gone wrong with this campaign. Also, you may see from the time bar at the bottom, this is quite a long video. The bulk of this video, I would argue 5-6 of it, is going to be the backer Zoom that was organised, that took place on the 30th of January 2024, where I spoke to a lot of backers, their thoughts and feelings, who they blamed, what they thought went wrong, and ultimately moving forward what they can do. And there'll be more of that here at the introduction, but if you come for that backer Zoom, just go to the timeline and it's chapterized there at the end. But why is this the last one video we're going to be making? Well, obviously that lack of updates from the organisation and an increasing suspicion that nothing is going to come from this is ultimately the main reason before it. When we first started covering the Storaxa NAS campaign, we did so because when it was first launched, it just seemed too good to be true. When you watch our first and second video, the consensus me and Eddie here at NAS Compares had about this project was it was a great idea and hopefully something that would really challenge turnkey NAS solutions from the likes of Synology, QNAP and more, and as well as being a much more user-friendly alternative to DIY solutions. But as by the title of our first video, Too Good to Be True, the pricing seemed too low. And when you're factoring in the individual components, sure, the price seemed reasonable enough. But once you factored in distribution, once you factored in RMAs, when you factored into quality control, when you factored in contingencies for things that could go wrong, the amount of money just didn't seem enough. And even though it raised 1.9 million initial funding and went up to an estimated 3.4 million with the extras that were added on top for storage, media, and network adapters and more, as much as that money sounds like a lucrative amount, once you break it across 5,900 backers, and once you factor in the scale of this solution, that amount of money still didn't seem quite enough to fulfill this project. And by our second video, we committed that we backed this project ourselves in order to cover this editorially. We wanted to see if, one, this would serve as an example of how these things can be done, and once again to challenge the status quo in NAS and hopefully encourage other developers to utilize this and challenge the industry and hopefully innovate within the industry. However, we also had to accept at that time that the other reason we were covering was if this didn't turn out to be successful, or that they could not fulfill this remit, whether it because they were in over their heads or for more negative reasons that we'll talk about more in the Zoom, then this had to be documented. It had to be shown as an example moving forward, because crowdfunding via Indiegogo, Kickstarter, CrowdSupply and other crowdfunding platforms, solutions like this and brands utilizing these platforms has become exceedingly attractive due to the range of global social media tools that they provide and the ability to market their product to a huge world stage. Unfortunately, that does open the door to exploitativism such as add-ons and more. So that's what this project was about, and unfortunately this didn't happen. And right now, and I hate writing all over that, we have to at least mark up the Storaxa Kickstarter NAS campaign as something of a failure. Now, I want to be proved wrong. I want, in the next month or so to retract this video. I'd love to. But unfortunately, more than 2 months of silence from the campaign organisers cannot be ignored. Additionally, as you can see on screen right now, there have been numerous, amber flags, red flags, slight warning signs throughout the course of the last 12 months. Now, a lot of these happen to most Kickstarter campaigns, whether it is for a network-attached storage device or for any product from a board game to a specialised book or a DVD. All of these on their own aren't really warning signs, but once you really impact them all happening to one campaign, and of course we're talking about the benefit of hindsight, there's no denying that these warning signs here are just one of many reasons why this campaign was always going to suffer difficulty from the early stages as well. Now, moving forward, we have to at least acknowledge that a large amount of failing, if this does indeed turn out to be a failure, a flop, whatever you want to call it, there's going to be a lot of money loss for a lot of people here, and a lot of culpability, it has to be said, is at the door of Kickstarter themselves. And we have to question just how much of Kickstarter is culpable for this. It will be very easy to turn around and say crowdfunding is gambling. You know, you're not buying a certain product, you're not going to eBay, you're not going to Amazon, and I get it. But at the same time, much like you use eBay to buy second-hand goods, you use eBay, and although you may trust the seller and the reviews that are there, you're also trusting the platform. The platform is carrying a lot of the weight when you are spending money on these, and the idea is that there will be, you know, methods of recovery. There will be reasons and means with which you are secured in these payments. And the same goes for Kickstarter. And when it comes to the incredulity of placement of report buttons on the Kickstarter pages, the fact that most correspondence and conversation, not just in the case of this Kickstarter campaign but others, was a thread of over 9,000 comments at the time of recording this right now, on a GUI web page that loads 25 comments at a time. That makes it very, very easy for existing issues and concerns to disappear very, very quickly, particularly in the eyes of, say, these 5,900 backers. Although, from an editorial stance, I was regularly monitoring these pages, the bulk of backers are not doing so, and consequently, it's very easy for many of the issues that I've discussed to disappear and never even appear on the radar of more casual backers that are just dipping in from time to time. Ultimately, yes, Storaxa and yes, ALOT have a lot to answer for here and continue to do so, but so do Kickstarter. And as discussed in the Zoom you're going to be watching very, very soon, we recommend, 1, that you hammer that report button, and 2, you use social media to contact Kickstarter and raise awareness on this. You will be responded to almost certainly with automated copy-paste replies, but this is about frequency and volume of complaint, because there are 3 outcomes. And again, I'm treading on the toes of what I say in the Zoom, but 3 outcomes are possible via that methodology. Number 1, nothing. Nothing will happen, and there will be pessimists that will say, why bother, it won't achieve anything. Number 2, enough noise and enough frequency of this failure on their part of accountability on Kickstarter's phase will force them into the conversation. And although it's very rare to see Kickstarter step in and force refunds from their own pocket or utilising third-party insurance, it's not impossible and has been heard of. And number 3, even if no return on investment for those users who back this project is possible, it will warn others moving forward. And the louder people are about this, the higher the likelihood that this will not happen again. When it comes to pursuing Storaxa and pursuing ALOT for losses that may have been incurred on this, you know, investigations will happen. There are everything from reports taking place right now with official law enforcement in the East. Alongside that, there are going to be Discords, there are going to be Reddit threads, there are going to be groups and collaborations of individuals that are going to do their own investigations, and I will link to as many of those as I can find in the description. Ultimately, right now, if you are a backer, you can really sit and watch. You know, we've all seen and heard about the TNC of Kickstarter, but for the rest of you, I hope if you're watching this video because you are thinking of backing a campaign on any crowdfunding site right now based on these, I hope this video serves as food for thought. It doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't back and you shouldn't use crowdfunding, as it is a model that works in practice, and there is proof of that, but there's no denying that there is sufficient evidence to be cautious, and I hope this video and this series of videos thus far helps you with that. Thank you so much for watching this whole series and of course this video. Now we're going to move over to the Zoom again from January the 30th. It's quite long, but if you want to hear from the voice of backers that have been impacted by this, it's a good watch. Apart from that, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the Zoom. A little bit of a previously on. Many of you were, or you know, indeed are backers of the Storaxa Kickstarter campaign that started a year ago and has gone weirdly dark and silent. And the word scam has been thrown around a lot, whether it is a scam or it is, you know, at least if we go to the negative conclusion, a case of some people that get in over their head. Is still, I think, yet to be concluded if we're going to be completely balanced about this. I mean, when me and Eddie first spoke about this campaign in January 2024, I think it would be fair to say we were optimistic for the first 10 to 15 minutes, and then things kind of went downhill a little bit. Originally, we got in contact with the Storaxa people back right at the start, I believe January 7th, I might be wrong, when we were told about it by one of our followers, the subscribers on YouTube. And we got in contact with them without necessarily digging enough into the campaign, because we were just kind of sent them like, oh, your product sounds cool. It'd be great to see if we can talk about it more on the channel. And then the more we looked into it, the worse, in terms of financing and how it could achieve its end at that price point, seemed to be quite thin, on very, very thin ice. We made a video about it. And we made that video, whereupon the Storaxa group were quite disappointed with that and kind of mentioned us and our comments in the comments section, which drew us into this story, which was why me and Eddie, backed the campaign, as we stated at the time and still continue to do so, that we are covering this campaign because we want to see how this ends. We, want to either be able to produce this as an example of a successful crowdfunding campaign that can challenge expensive turnkey solutions from Synology or QNAP, or this is going to represent a kind of sad testimony that, you need to spend money on things like this to get a legitimate, solid product. And unfortunately, this is erring more towards the latter. So before I go any further, has anyone else got any comments I'd like to add to that with regards to the Kickstarter campaign thus far? I'll be honest, Vitali, that microphone looks way too professional for you not to have an opinion. Has anyone got a thought or they'd like to add to that?
Yeah, just my thoughts.
Cool.
Because they have virus router built in, and one small red flag that they mention nothing about FCC and CA certifications. So it was like one small red flag, but it happened.
Well, do you know what? And to Eddie's credit there, on my screen he's on the top left. I'm not going to go with the whole big picture in the middle thing. When we recorded the third video, Ed raised that after we'd recorded the third video. And I told him, oh my God, that's great. We should put that in the next. And I'd forgot. That's the honest truth. Hands in the air. After all of the stuff that we did with Synology's routers and how often we crawled FCC pages on their routers to find out more information about the last two releases, I'm kind of disappointed in myself for not recalling that. But to Eddie's credit, who is there on my screen, because this is being recorded, he did bring that up. But it was my fault that it didn't make it into the production video. But that was a fairly early flag. Prior to this video, I should mention, we do a monthly Zoom, not to self-plug, we're not going to do that. But there's a few members of NAS Compared in a circle who we do Zooms with. And prior to this, for half an hour prior to this recording, we sort of talked about crowdfunding within the world of private servers. And one of the questions that was raised, very early doors, I might add, was how many red flags were there? And I think now we can talk about this a year on, particularly people that followed this campaign and have backed it or managed to get their money back. I think it would be fair to say there were quite a few amber flags and red flags along the way. So straight away there, you're bang on, Vitali, with that FCC no certification or proof of testing. Whether it was they might have been using components, AliExpress components, let's give the benefit of the doubt, at least within this bubble. They could have been, much like the Cage, much like the Mobo, using components that were already certified, possibly.
No, still no, because even if they are producing like the whole, I know how to tell it. The whole box, they need also to check like materials to sell it in European Union, because there are a lot of restrictions with selling all possible materials. Also, we have Prop 65 in California, that is cancer, possible cancer made in products. It also needs to be certified in Prop 65. So there are a lot of those certifications, and FCC and CA are they take in not week, not months, but a couple months, because they need to do all possible samples. They check in if there are no radiation, if there are no overloading virus signals, so on. And it doesn't matter if it's pre-built components or not pre-built components. For example, if you even buying TP-Link routers, you still have some Ataroha, as I remember, like various modules or QRCOM various modules, they still doing like those all certifications because you can like create some amplifier on it, and they also need to check if there are an amplifier after this module, if like your antennas are in the proper size. So
But yeah, I mean, you're bang on the banana. I'm trying to give the tiniest thread of a benefit of the doubt, but let's be realistic. That's fairly damning. And again, I think I should add as well. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but there is an option on the bottom of your screen in Zoom. If you can't see it, just sort of move the mouse around, and you see an option called Raise Hand. If you're on a mobile device, there's an option there too. If you do have a point to add at any point during the discussion, go ahead and tap that button, and I'll make sure to head over to you at the end of the point or immediately. But again, that was just, I mean, that's one of the flags I think didn't even get anywhere near the coverage, not only by myself and Eddie, but by others as well. But things such as the shipping test with those SD cards seemed woefully inadequate as well. I think that was one of the earliest big flags for me, when that so-called shipping test that was running wasn't a shipping test. And there were other ones. I mean, obviously we could go to the most obvious one, which was a day one flag, which was, of course, the price point. The price point, if you were to buy the parts from Ali, not pay labour, put the parts together and produce the case yourself, you might be able to get in that price point. But the price point was always notoriously low for a mass-produced product that was going to be shipped to 5,900 people. Okay, JF, fire away. I'm going to have to unmute you. Apparently I can't unmute you. You're going to have to do it yourself.
No. I just wanted to say, totally agree with you. That should be a red flag for us, because the price was low, was very low, was very attractive, and I guess that was the trick. No, everybody wants to take the advantage of that low price that they were offering.
I think, and again, I don't know, and we'll talk probably a little bit more later on in the discussion about this, but the impact of this afterwards. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of another crowdfunding campaign. I'm just going to share screen here ever so briefly. There was another campaign later on, let's find it here, for a router. Let's find this thing. Now, again, massive kudos to a couple of the members of the Storaxa backer community. This product rolled out a Wi-Fi 7 router. Wi-Fi 7 already. January 2024. Yeah, why not? And ultimately, this campaign has it's been shut down by the project creator, but it becomes abundantly clear once you read the description that this campaign was surgically dismantled by the case of all of the errors contained therein. Now, this is the kind of thing that, and again, we can point at myself and Eddie as well. This would have been great at the beginning of the crowdfunding campaign for a kind of systematic and almost surgical takedown of why this product is difficult to, achieve there. If I exit the share screen there. And I think one of the other early signs of, and I mentioned this in the Inner Circle Zoom prior to this one, was that case. For more than half of 2023, they just would not show the case. There was none of it. They would keep talking about the motherboard, showing off those specifications and boards, and we'll get onto a point about U-Star later as well. But the actual physical case this device was going to arrive with just simply would not be shown. And the only time it was shown, and again, I'm going to have to share screen again because some of you I know are not actually backers. The main time it was shown, and I know, again, if you didn't follow this campaign, you've got to look at this through the eyes of people that have money invested in this, was this case when it was shown. It was shown very vaguely at one point with tape and sellotape around it. Let's find the zoom. Here, product update. Here, there was the internal cage bay that, again, on secondary inspection does look like it could have done with a little bit more work. Let's go for that one there. Sorry, I should have had this prepared more in advance. There's all the talk of the stripe. We will get on to stripe later on, ladies and gentlemen. But the case, this was the first time we saw the case. And after this was an update that the case needed modification as well. And then finally, the very last update by the brand was this one, showing, well, this, whatever this is. And again, the alignment of it, the shape of it, just didn't seem to quite match some of those early signs. And that was kind of one of the main death bell notes, I would say, of the design there that wasn't really consistent throughout the whole process. But yeah, sorry, Vitaly, you had your hand up there. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that there are like already Wi-Fi 7 routers, not so expensive. For example, Xiaomi BA 360, 3600s, and it's like not so expensive, so it's realistic. But in this price that they're offering on Kickstarter, no.
Exactly, and that's the point. I mean, Realtek last year at Computex, we were talking about Realtek, some of those real power efficient Wi-Fi 7 adapters that they're rocking out that were pretty consistent in the performance, obviously taking advantage of the band. But yeah, I'm glad that was dismantled, that entire campaign, but it doesn't mean it's not going to come back. But it also raises the question of legitimate campaigns that there are going to be now, let's face it, give or take about 5,500 people who are now completely, oh, no way am I doing this again. They don't have a solution. They're down. Some of them, as little as $250, some of them as much as $2,500 are out of pocket, and they're not going to trust this as a medium. And there are cases where crowdfunding can be, very, very beneficial. And it's just that part of this alone is such a damn shame. Again, if anyone's got any points, just go ahead and click raise hand. But I'm going to get on to a matter regarding Ustar. Something I was going to talk about in December, but some other information was raised in the interim. So again, I'm not sure how many of you are aware. Actually, before I get onto that, Francesco, go ahead. Ataria, solid surname. Oh, you're going to have to unmute yourself, Francesco.
Hello,
Go ahead,
can you hear me?
Yep, fire away, no worries.
Yeah. I want to point out a point that, in my opinion, is the most relevant. I know that all of us are responsible for our own money, and I'm not here to blame anyone, but I think that the system on this crowdfunding site need to change, because if I take the money in advance after the campaign is founded, I have no interest and no incentive in seeing the campaign through. So these things are bound to happen again and again. This one was fairly big, and therefore there is much bigger impact on the baker and the money involved. But if I take demand a percentage upfront and a percentage if the project was delivered, I'm bound to inspire more confidence in the baker, because the platform, I've invested in see the project through as much as the baker. With this method of taking all the money up front, the vetting is bound not to be as thorough as it should be, because I'm not incentivized to shut down a project, but to say, yes, you can do it. Give me the money and bye-bye.
I mean, the only counterpoint I would make to them, by the way, when I say counterpoint, I'm just trying to be as objective as possible, would be that sometimes people have an idea, they don't have the funding, and they will see just how... just if we were to play devil's advocate, Storaxa, and again, I can't in good conscience call them scammers or call them whether they are an outfit that had good intention that went wrong, because we simply don't know the whole thing. But what I will say is, if I had an idea and I had 5,900 people and raised 1.9 million for it, there is the question of, this is clearly something that works, I can turn this into something bigger. And I think there are people that run crowdfunding campaigns through passion or by entrepreneurialism that want to go even bigger and bigger. But unfortunately, as you say, there are a lot of bad apples that will just go ahead and go, phew, I just made $1 million. Why do I have to do the doing of the thing?
No,
so,
I must be misunderstood. I'm not saying Storaxa is necessarily a scam. I say the system advantage can be taken advantage of scammers, or there is no actual reason to do a proper vetting, because Kickstarter says, I vetted the project. How? How are you? Why you should vet the project if you take the money up front? I have Kickstarter has no incentive to shut down a project other than the brand name. But there are a lot of projects on Kickstarter. If one goes bad, is in the whole in the big picture, it's not a big loss. Instead, it's a big win because the money have
Yeah, you're right.
already
Yeah.
flowed away.
I mean, again,
I
I think, yeah, no, I see what you mean. I mean, again, I think at this time, I think we can all at least consistently agree two things. Number one, that Storaxa has let down backers one way or another, and two, Kickstarter has not done enough. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that later on. But Vitaly, you've got a point there. Before I go any further, go ahead.
Yeah, because like on Kickstarter rules, if you are trying to start a campaign, you need to have fully working, like almost final prototypes that you are showing to Kickstarter. So they had something. I guess this one unit that we are showing on videos, and it was only one, and they showed it to Kickstarter. So in general, this product existed. Yeah, it was real, but they just don't want it to do it in a big scale. That's all.
I think, but there is another discussion. This is the one I was going to allude to if I go to the share screen again. So there's 2 points I'm going to discuss, really. Number one, the culpability of Kickstarter in this, because I'm already trying to speak with Kickstarter to get this, at the very least. Me and Eddie here at NAS Compares, we don't hold much clout. Let's face it, in the grand scheme of things, we are a grit of sand in the grand scheme of things with regards to marketing agency or any kind of social damage that could be done or any kind of pushback. But I already kind of contacted them about this, kind of, I'm not going to say in a threatening way, but effectively saying, look, we've covered this for a year. And again, this will be in the video that's coming out in the next day or so, saying, look, we've been covering this editorially for a year. Backers feel let down. I think you have to agree they have been let down. You're not doing enough. And maybe the spotlight should be on you, not them as much. And that is something that's kind of something we're going to talk about in the video in the next day or so. And Kickstarter's response was incredibly lacking, effectively telling people, just click the report this project button. And again, anyone that's ever used the report this project button, have you ever tried to find the report this project button on a project? You have to go to the campaign page. You have to scroll all the way down to the campaign page. And I know this video isn't Let's Hate Kickstarter, but from what I can see, you have to make your way to the bottom of the campaign page and then find report this Kickstarter. Now, at times, there was periodic kind of pop-up for some users where it came up higher. But even if you clicked negatively on the project, that should have automatically gone to a report, and it didn't show that. And the same goes with the open letter that I've published online. Again, no real response to that there. And at the moment, if you go into the comment section of this Kickstarter, there is now obviously discussion of raising this with Hong Kong with regards to fraud and scams via their police system down there. But it's really just the impact, I think, that's depressing on other crowdfunding campaigns that are legitimate. We've talked about the ZimmerCube, which again is coming from a company that's done 2 previous successful campaigns. The Link Station that was using, frankly, one of the dodgiest crowdfunding websites in the world, where you can effectively run a project with no proof of concept or any kind of prototype and still take the money regardless of how much is raised. But there have been numerous successful ones alongside numerous bad ones. This one can go do one as well. But ultimately, let's head back and we'll come back to a lot of those screens there in just a moment. Matt, go ahead.
Hey there. So I am a backer of Storaxa, and one of the questions I do have, because you do make a valid point about just reporting it or sending an email or whatnot. My question is, how many other folks that have backed this project have actually gone and emailed Kickstarter directly regarding this? Because, I mean, in my mind, I would think the more noise that's made about a project, especially from its backers, the backer society for Storaxa, that would force the hand of Kickstarter to have to go back to Storaxa and be like, what is going on with this project? We have, I think you said somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,700 backers of this product. If a third of those were to report this product, what would Kickstarter have to do then at that point? Is that a direction that us as a community should be trying to drive towards to try to find some sort of a remediation for this?
Well, hopefully that is kind of what's taking place now. The problem is that I think more than I would argue more than a third, probably even more than half of backers are passive backers, people that traditionally will back several projects at any given time. If you look at the comments of the Kickstarter campaign, very quickly you notice there are people that have not been following things. And again, a lot of this comes down to Kickstarter's horrendous one post a million miles along system of people coming along going, so what's going on with this project? They're just not avidly following it in the way that some of us, whether it's for editorial reasons or because of the moolah, are doing so. And that kind of consistent growth towards getting people to report it, to hit social media, takes time, unfortunately. And a lot of that, and this goes back to something we mentioned in a previous Zoom about the bubble and the echo chamber that can be the case in a lot of these comment forums, the tipping point when users will say, no, you shouldn't complain, you shouldn't rock the boat because you're going to undermine the project for the rest of us. That was very much the case for a lot of backers as far back as, not even recently, September, October. There are a lot of people saying, do not try to get a refund, you'll destabilise this project for other users. And myself and Eddie, from an editorial stance, couldn't lean forward and go, are you stupid? What are you doing? We couldn't do that. We couldn't say that because you can't remain neutral with that point of view. But ultimately, now is the beginning of that tipping point. Whether something comes of it, who knows? Fingers crossed. But okay, I hope that kind of will come back to that, I believe. But over you, PGF Snoopy. Again, solid name. Go ahead.
Hi. 2 points. The one point is concerning reporting the campaign. We are all conditioned to expect nothing from reporting the campaign. I've reported all the campaigns where I got scammed or where the creator just vanished because they were in over their head. Mm. One example being the Coup neck cooler.
Ah, of course.
Kickstarter just said, oh, they made an effort and they did what we expect them to do. So campaign is not a fraud. Everything is okay. That's one point. And the other point is I am one of those who said, if this campaign is legit, now withdrawing your funds will tip the campaign over because if they miscalculated and had just enough funds to do what they had set out to do, withdrawing funds would tip them over, would drive them into bankruptcy. So this point is not wrong, and it's anything but stupid.
No.
If this is a scam, then yeah, sure, you should try to get your money back. But who am I to say it's a scam? Because they showed at least the effort Kickstarter expects of them.
I think hindsight is the beneficial element here, and unfortunately, there's a lot of unknowns. But just before I feel like Fabian has a point that's going to be very, very relevant because he's looked at the screen several times, and this better be great, Fabian.
Well, I just checked where's the where is Kickstarter, their business address, and they're in Brooklyn, New York. So that's would be about 7 hours drive for me to go there and knock on the door. I don't know if we would have somebody closer.
To be honest, I was in New York last week and I didn't realise. I never knew they were New York based. Do you know what? I would have added that to the video as well. Unfortunately, I think that you could go down that route, but the ultimate answer is going to be they're going to be very delicate. And I think the real way to approach this, as mentioned earlier on, would be a large, concise kind of numbers game of lots of people reporting and lots of people going direct and going very loud on social media.
You've received exactly the same automatic letter than I did.
Exactly.
You know, when you reported the project, I received the same automated response. And really, I'm sure you feel the same. It's as if nobody's reading our mails.
Of course. And again, that's where the larger effort. I mean, whenever you've looked in the past, and again, I do recommend checking out the channel Kick Scammers, Slopes Game Room. Whenever there is a crowdfunding, not just Indiegogo is normally the place where stuff like this happens a lot more commonly. It is those larger scale reporting efforts that tend to have to pull Kickstarter in. And again, we will talk as well about the payment provider Stripe later on and how much legitimacy and utility there was in their claims by Storaxa earlier on. But again, I'm sorry, Vitaly, go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say.
sorry, Fabian. Sorry, I thought that was sorry.
Yeah, I was about to add a talk then about Pledgebox. And
I just wanted to add about that. So like,
Pledgebox, they're located in Asia Pacific. So I don't know what's the relation between the two organizations. It's bizarre, just bizarre.
There are no relation in general. Just like everyone can use any platform just to collect additional money, and like it's the biggest problem because what we see on the Kickstarter is just a small part what people spend on Pledgebox.
Right.
Even I don't know, I spent maybe 5x more than I spent on Kickstarter on this project.
I think it was 1.6 million, I think, was raised on top of the 1.9. It came to 3.4 million top.
I guess it was much more because a lot of people, if you check Reddit, for example, subreddits, a lot of people bought hard drives, SSDs, like I guess everyone did upgrade on RAM memory and just much more money that was done on Pledgebox.
Again, one of the depressing elements about that Pledgebox and all the add-ons being added to it was the number of people that rightly said halfway through the campaign, well, if you're not going to ship the unit, those drives have changed price. I would love to have my hard drives now, please. That was one of the other many, amber or red flags that came up during the course of this project. Again, I think PFG snooping, again, the hands aren't going down on Zoom. Thanks, Zoom. So I don't know if that's an old one, but if it's a new point, go ahead, PFG.
It's a new one.
Far away.
It's concerning the hard drives. I think that's a typical example for greed. People thought, hardware prices are rising, especially for hard drives. I buy them now and get a good deal, and maybe I even sell them and buy cheaper ones when prices are going down again. Then they got down way earlier than they expected, and now they are angry.
Well,
I think if you're gambling on these things, I think you deserve to get burned. So I have no compassion for people who are burned because of the hard drives. The other parts, upgraded hardware, of course, we all got burned there. I think. I'm
not sure that's going to.
You and the like.
I would say, with regards to Pledgebox, it's not uncommon to see that featured on Kickstarter, and indeed any platform to have add-ons there. And I think it was one of those in for a penny, in for a pound motivations that can be open to exploitation. But one of the things I do want to talk about a little bit, and this I should have added there at the beginning. One of the main, this is probably going to be, if not the last public video I talk about Storaxa monthly. This will be the last video about the campaign in of itself. I don't think it'll be the last time me and Eddie will be talking about Storaxa, and particularly with regards to chasing this where possible with Kickstarter. But one of the main motivations about making all of these videos, as we said 12 months ago, was to either show this as a success, that this can be done on a budget, and to challenge turnkey solutions, or this should serve as a warning for users in the future who are going to go and either invest in crowdfunding campaign servers or run their own. That's what this campaign, this whole selection of videos that we did, one a month for the last year or so, was about. And I think it would be remiss not to at least address one question that was really recurring throughout the whole campaign. It became very apparent very early on, via admission of the campaign, the Storaxa / ArrowTrack themselves and others along the way, that a lot of the components being utilised in this system were third party. They were either purchased or at least sourced behind retail, at cost from, AliExpress and distributors like that. And I'm not sure how people felt about a solution being presented as a crowd-funded solution when a lot of the parts may have come from third parties. So if, for example, based on everything we know now about the solution, such as we do you think if you'd known that the solution was available to be purchased modularly from the likes of AliExpress, would you have still backed the Storaxa solution or not? I realise I've just addressed the question there to a bunch. Go ahead, Vitaly.
I was not raising my hand, but I can.
Go ahead, fire away. It's a free-flowing discussion. Why not? We're all jellyfish.
Yeah, in general, yes, because I baked a lot of previous campaigns that were just even not from even like pre-built components, but it was like some kind of drop shipping. So they was buying a lot of amount of parts from AliExpress. For example, Gigapump, if I know someone baked it or not, it was present on AliExpress for a long time. But company like bought like the same, but add some add-ons and sold it as a Kickstarter campaign. And it was successful. So if it's done from like modular parts, so still yes, because for example, I don't have too much time to build it by my own. I don't have time like to be like all Proxmox installation. I just want to put it, for example, as a Synology NAS servers. I just want to put it on a shelf, turn on, click 5 buttons, that's done. So I'm paying money not for like components. I'm paying money that someone did all this job before me, tested it, like tested heating. So I don't need to buy new fans in it. I don't need to install fans. So they already tested.
Again, it's a very valid point. I think a lot of users, that was their counterpoint when this was raised about certain components. Even one of the last components, that internal 4-bay cage thing to slot inside, I think it was not even 9 minutes before someone posted a link to the very same component on AliExpress. But yeah, I'm going somewhere with this. But over to you, Francesco.
I personally don't think that using off-the-shelf component to assemble an idea is necessarily a bad thing. I give you my example for another situation. I have a disability. I love computers. I love tinkering with stuff. I love experimenting, but I need help to assemble final part, put in a case, and so this solution would have allowed me to build a system without ever to asking for help from my friends, my father, to help me assemble it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing per se, but obviously the image of the project is debilitated because most people look at it and say, well, I can do it too for more or less the same amount of money, but not all situations are the same. So if a project deliver, whatever simple it is always a good thing, despite of the complexity.
I think as long as a campaign is transparent, that's where they're getting the components from. And again, I genuinely am going somewhere with this, but just for me, the big issue was that there needed to be a little bit more transparency on the sourcing of those components, the availability of the components, where they're coming from, and whether the delays were actual delays. But one sec, who was Matt? You were next. It goes Matt, and then it goes PFG, and then over to you, Thales. So Matt first, go ahead.
Sure. Two parts for me as to why I backed it versus just sourcing it and building it myself. One, I don't have the time to sit down and build these things anymore. I'm in the same boat. I love tinkering with technology. But when it comes down to it, like how much time can I dedicate to actually building this and, getting it set up on my network and doing what I want to do functionally versus, taking the time to build it out. But I mean, there's also another side of it too, with the intellectual property side. I assume, which, assuming in this case would probably not the best idea, but I'd assume that they did their testing. They had, requisite POCs. They, did their own sort of bulletproof testing to make sure that everything worked. And then they were just looking to go to scale. That's what you assume when you back these types of projects. So I opted in with that thought in mind. The price point, I will not lie to you, was kind of that was a warning shot for me right from the get-go. But I'm like, okay, let's give it a shot. I haven't gotten burned by Kickstarter yet. So this would be the first time that if this is indeed, a scam or failed Kickstarter, this is my first experience for that. So, it definitely does change my view on things. However, to the question you asked, I don't know that I could make the argument for sourcing the stuff and doing it myself at the price point when honestly, I spend a few $100 more and I just go buy, an Asus NAS and hook it up onto my network and put it inside of my Mac and I'm done, right? Like 20 minutes and it's done. So, I'm actually sitting here weighing the thought of like, well, maybe I should have just went a different direction, paid more money, and I would have had a functional NAS in my system and I could have been using it right now versus
for the better part of a year, yeah.
Exactly right. So, I mean, it's the money saved versus the time wasted for me now, I think, is what I'm trying to have to kind of resolve. So that's my stance on
it. What about you, PFG? I'm used to saying you by your shorthand name now.
It's okay. The moment they got me, so Storaxa got me, is when they offered the higher performance CPU options. I already own a QNAP NAS. Okay, it's over 10 years old and never failed me. So the obvious choice would be to buy another one of those. But what I wanted to do with this is not only have a NAS, but have a device for experimenting with virtualization. I work in IT and I work in a very prohibitive environment. So there is no chance of experimenting with new skills, new technology in my job. If I want to learn something, I have to do it in my own home environment. And that's why I wanted to buy this one. Because nobody offers low power, high performance, comparatively, NAS like that. And I wouldn't mind building it my own if I could find a mainboard in this small form factor
scale,
with... Yeah, because all you can find are these N6100 and 5100 CPU NAS mainboards, and they don't cut it for me. And I don't want, to buy a mainboard with a powerful CPU with 45 or 65 PDP, watt TDP.
Okay, so I'm just going to head over to Thales in a sec, but I just wanted to highlight as well, I think it would be remiss to not at least highlight that a year ago when this launched, it wasn't so commonplace to see a lot of MIT exports with the kind of hardware this is cracking. Now, they are quite ubiquitous. I mean, we looked at an Ying i9 board with that Johnsbow build in December for like $230-something. That was insane. But a year ago, that didn't exist. And there's a lot more solutions like the Ugreen DXP, a video coming out in a couple of days. That's another system that's coming to Kickstarter, but it's coming from a brand that's got 10, 12 years of experience behind it. But we'll get over to you, Thales. Fire away. I should introduce Thales. Hasn't backed this Kickstarter campaign. He's one of the NAS Compares Inner Circle members, and there's a few of the kind of NCers here. But go ahead, Thales.
Okay, so I did back up some other products, and I was not very satisfied. At least I received the product. This is something. But in general, what I think is that people get driven to this kind of things because of the price, okay? And there is no miracle. If a company, a big company, can buy ships in quantity, they get a lower price. How can someone that has an office in Hong Kong, in a room, in a dirty room, like we saw the box in the floor, can make a kind of deal and make a production of something that doesn't exist? I think that people is very naive to take that risk. And the company also, the Kickstarters, if you look at their site, they don't compromise themselves with nothing. There's not a law that will take them to court if something goes wrong, at least for the moment. And we're going to have to wait to some big thing to happen that will go to the media and will alert people. Right now, we are very few people taking that kind of risk and trying to make something of it. I don't put my money on something really if it is important for me. I will not give my money to some Chinese guy that is in a room making something that I will maybe get 500 or 50% discount on something. I prefer to have the full product. with guarantee, with warranty on it, and don't have to those kind of problems.
The only thing I would counterpoint there, just slightly, Thales, is a lot of the time it is about the cost of the hardware, and it doesn't make it impossible to happen. There's been successful stories, and I think 5,900 people. One could argue, some people may have backed it thinking it was too good to be true. Some people thinking not that much money to spend. But we could look at a lot of solutions from established NAS brands like Synology and QNAP as well that provide very, very low price devices that make quite bold promises. Different promises, I'll grant you. But I think we can't really label this whole thing as naive. But again, everyone respect their opinion and stuff. I'm just going to move Mo Fee. Fire away. Hello?
Hi?
Mo Fee, if you've got,
hi.
your hand raised there. Fire away.
Hi, guys. Thanks for hosting this. I just wanted to add that I'm a bit disappointed by the due diligence that Kickstarter needs to do, because the project is called Storaxa. Then you got a company named AeroTrack, and you got invoices going to Advanced Development Limited, so a third company. And I bought the Hong Kong Business Registry entry for that company, and that company is registered to a totally different name. So I'm wondering what kind of due diligence does Kickstarter actually do on this?
Well, one earlier on in the discussion here, again, I'm not sure if you were here for that bit. I apologise if you were, you weren't. But again, we're going to be trying to do some kind of arranged larger scale contact of Kickstarter, presumably on social media platforms, because that's really the only recourse at this point, and highlighting their failings. I mean, me and Eddie are quite small in what we do, but on a larger scale, we are still talking about 5,900 people that have been impacted by this. And I think, failings by Kickstarter, be it with their due diligence, doing it with their accountability, these are things that need to be raised in a more concise fashion. Also, I saw it raised in the comments earlier, there is another Discord running that really does go into a lot more detail, and a lot of the investigative materials might be landing on there as well. So notwithstanding what we've done, there's also a fantastic Discord that is breaking down a lot of the evidence found thus far that will hopefully be put together and presented on a broader, larger scale for as many users as possible, because it's going to be a question of frequency and volume with regards to complaint and pulling Kickstarter into this, whether it is that they have to cover some of the losses or at the very least admit their failure, because this is still one of, if not the biggest x86 server crowdfunded campaign in history. Most of the ones I've looked at for articles and videos raised between $20,000 and $50,000. This raised, with the extras, 3.4 million. But again, we'll have to wait and see on that what can be done. Johannes, fire away.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Johannes, Sweden here. Yes, I think many speaks as professionals in the field right now. There are many of us who has supported this project because we thought the product was good. I myself, I needed a replacement for our Drobo, and I don't know anything about either prices or third-party components. What we need to talk about is how we move forward together. Kickstarter must have a responsibility and must at least give us answers to our questions. I mean, Kickstarter, they have made very lot of money of this, at least 5% of the total. They must have a responsibility in this.
No, I completely agree, and that's hopefully the concerted effort that will come off the back of this. I mean, again, I mentioned this earlier on about the, frank echo chamber that can happen in a lot of comment sections, and that horrible kind of one thread system that Kickstarter uses for internal backer communication. But a lot of that, when you look back at those comments of August, September, and even October, there were people raising concerns, raising doubts and wanting refunds, and then being shouted down not by the creators or the campaign managers, but by other backers going, don't destabilize this for the rest of us. And unfortunately, that time has passed. Hindsight is really, really useful at times. But yeah, a concerted effort and an organized effort is really the only recourse forward. I showed earlier on, again, I believe you were here for that bit, but even reporting a Kickstarter campaign, you have to scroll all the way to the bottom of the mainline campaign page.
I have that.
Very poor, very, very poor.
I have received the same answer as you.
It's horrendous, isn't it? It's absolutely horrendous.
But if this is a scam, is it the biggest scam in Kickstarter's
Oh,
history?
no, definitely not. There are water coolers and beer coolers, I believe, that were on Kickstarter that will raise more than this one. But in terms of this kind of product, I believe it is. I was looking at Indiegogo's and Kickstarters for some videos last year for looking for comparative data. While I was ultimately, let's look behind the curtain a bit. I wanted to present and cover this as best as I could and as neutral as I could, but I needed a sense of perspective over the amber and red flags that I was seeing. And the only way I could do that was to look through other previous campaigns, hence that video and that article for that comparative data. So even with that, I would say I probably did about 72, maybe 73, 4 days of research. This was still the biggest I have seen. But yeah.
But if we're talking money for each person, is it the biggest failure per person if we take it as a Kickstarter campaign?
Again, it's hard to say because some people back $250, some of them $2,500. I'm not sure what we would do with that mathematics, even if we did divide 3.4 million by 4,900. Someone's going to open a calculator. I know you will. I would have if I wasn't chatting right now. And I'm sure that number, as big as that number might seem, that's only going to be reflective of the people going, whew, it could have been a lot worse, and other people going, oh my God, it's terrible. But ultimately pushing Kickstarter, making as much social noise as possible is unfortunately the only real course of action. Most users are outside of their cashback or reclamation with a credit card company. And, I've seen people raising comments about contacting, investigative platforms in Hong Kong. And, correlating all this evidence together is going to be very, very useful to put forward. But really, it is just Kickstarter here.
But Storaxa hasn't received all the money. What is happening with the money that Kickstarter and the card provider has?
Funny you should mention that, because this was something we were going to talk about later on. And don't worry if you've got your hand up there, Francesco Vitali. I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, by the way, Vitali. I apologise in advance. But when it comes to that money, Storaxa were the ones that were talking about Stripe holding on to some of those funds. But remember, all we knew about that was what Storaxa was saying. Storaxa were the only people that were saying that money was being held. Unless someone could, tell me otherwise, I did not see anywhere else online other than from them that those finances were being held, and in emails that were showing a fraction of a conversation and more. Now, whether that was to keep people on the hook to make sure cashback couldn't happen, or that they really had only received 50% of the funds and they were trying to keep people on the hook. And I'm going worst case scenario here. I think we have to accept that chances are they have received the bulk of those funds. And again, I'd love to be wrong. And if someone can, highlight that I am wrong, fantastic. But from my understanding, I believe that money has landed or had landed with them.
Okay, thank you.
But no, it's Vitali, far away.
Yeah, first of all, Kickstarter is not selling a product; they selling an idea of this product. And every time when you trying to pledge any item on Kickstarter, you have a lot of text, 5 sentences, that Kickstarter is not responsible for the product claims or reward fulfillment. So Kickstarter will do nothing in general, because each time when you click on a button pledge this item, you're applying the rules. So that's all. You knew that it can be not fulfilled. You knew that you get no rewards at all, so that your money just can go somewhere in space. That's all.
The only thing I would I wouldn't even say counterpoint to that, but just to add, taking devil's advocate, one, we have to at least acknowledge Kickstarter's accountability, and they have to acknowledge it. So a large enough online campaign is going to deter people from pursuing other campaigns of this nature. There's 5,900 people who I'm willing to bet are not going to get themselves a server on Kickstarter or even any other solution long term of any form on Kickstarter because they've been burnt in this fashion. On top of that, there is the question of later on. I showed an example earlier on of that router, that Wi-Fi 7 router NAS thing that got completely dismantled and dissected by people that had been impacted by Storaxa, and that will continue. I think those small efforts all add up. So even if Kickstarter do a big old statement that goes, look, you knows what you guys signed, suck it up. say we go for something as awful as that happens, I think they have to at least publicly acknowledge that, and the damage that can cause to their reputation in a small or large context, I think does have value. But again, that's just my perspective. I appreciate that. I mean, again, when we're looking at raising things with, say, Stripe, the payment handler, one look online, looking at the way people complain about Stripe, there's two main courses of complaint people have with Stripe. You have people that deal with Stripe directly, who then complain about their overzealous rules, and you have people that are saying, oh, release the funds for this crowdfunding campaign, you're strangling it. But it's Kickstarter themselves. Afterwards, Pledgebox, afterwards, Stripe, but it's Kickstarter at the top that need to be pursued, at the very least, to get them to officially acknowledge that this is a loss, one way or another. But you're right, Kickstarter is not buying on eBay, it's not buying on Amazon. And there I've seen comments in the Storaxa comment section of people going, well, it's no different than gambling. I put my money down on that and I win and I lose. But this is rigged gambling, because there are so many methods in place for you to not get your money back easily, notwithstanding rigorous layers in the campaigns themselves, but also the social pressure and that echo chamber that I mentioned earlier on, where people were seeking refunds and getting shouted down. But that's by the by. I do think a concerted effort towards Kickstarter, unfortunately, is the only way forward on a campaign like this. And anyone watching this, because you were curious about backing a server project, I'd like to assume this will sway you away from it. But Francesco, fire away.
I want to tell that I generally agreed with Vitaly that we have to take responsibility, because we agree to the term and condition for Kickstarter, obviously. But when you if we cannot do anything for this project because we agree, we have to admit that the system is not working for anyone, because for honest campaigner, it's difficult to build a project if there are many that don't deliver. For bakers, it doesn't work. The only part in which this system works is for Kickstarter, because Kickstarter does nothing that is not take the money from the company who use the site and from the bakers who contribute. So yes, I understand that I have agreed to Kickstarter, that Kickstarter is not responsible, but I have agreed because I think that Kickstarter give the opportunity to whoever an idea to found their project, but agreeing is not the same as is right. I agree to a condition, but this condition has proved time and time again that doesn't work. No, now for this project, like all other projects that I baked in the past, I know this and I upset this, and I risk my money only the money I can lose. I perfectly understand this, but in the future, for the sake of the future baker and the future entrepreneur who want to use this system has to change in some way, and Kickstarter have to take responsibility, because the act of taking money should come with a responsibility, like an exchange where you trade stock, you trade Bitcoin. The exchange have some responsibility. This situation is not like any others, where the site takes the money and then bye bye. It's not fair in any way for any of the parties involved, except for Kickstarter itself.
Again, I agree with pretty much all of that. And then again, Thales, fire away. You were next.
Yeah, what I think is that we are missing here that we need a legal framework for this kind of business. There is a hole on the legal system that doesn't cover perfectly those kind of new situation arriving with the internet, with the new kind of environment that we have. If you go, for example, in a bank and you want to buy some kind of bonds or kind of investment, they will ask you to fulfill a lot of papers saying like that you're aware of the risks, that you know what you're doing, that they are not responsible if you lose your money, okay? It's your risk and other things like that. And when I said that we are very naive, is that because we have that kind of feeling that we want to trust them. We find the idea is something nice for us that likes technology and would like to have something different. But they're also, if you look on the other side, they're okay. Now we get those people that let's try to produce something here that we'll try to sell to them, but we don't have to deliver. No one will come after us here. You see, so there is a hole on the legal system, and even for the Kickstarter company, that has to comply with it, with this.
But again, that's kind of largely the point, then, isn't it? It's Kickstarter's accountability that's up for question. I don't think we should, in worst case scenario, if this is a big scam, if this is a bunch of people that went, that looks like a lot of hard work, and forgive me, just effed off, they have to be pursued. But the main enabling factor here has been Kickstarter and that lack of management of this, because a lot of the time when you do invest in a crowdfunded project, be it for a book or a high-def NAS, I think you yourself sort of went around that. The idea is that you see Kickstarter as a certification system, a way of going, well, it wouldn't get this far if Kickstarter wasn't at least doing the checks in the background. So that's why it brings into question about, for me, Kickstarter's accountability.
Have you seen any check of the Kickstarters?
Or how much they've achieved, how much Kickstarter would get from this? I think you can go to their pages and
No.
Oh.
When someone places a product on the Kickstarter, what they do, they provide a platform for collecting money.
A lot of the time,
some information, but who is checking this?
Well, this is the major question, because Kickstarter state that you need to have a physical prototype in place. You have to have a plan of action in place. And there's a lot more to it. And again, I'm not going to try and describe it here because, frankly, I don't have all of those facts at hand. But I will say,
that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. That is the problem, 100%. And it's how deep those checks go and the legitimacy of those, how far they go.
They are not. They don't have any responsibility over it.
Well,
they say.
Well, I was going to say real quick, just before we continue any further, this harks back to a point I was going to make earlier on about using third-party components. I was going to say Mofi and PFG Snoopy there. Again, solid names, by the way. I just want to quickly allude to some other stuff during the tail end of the Kickstarter campaign. Talis, if you follow the YouTube channel, you might know about a product we've talked about from Ustar, the R1 or the R7. I'm just going to lower your hand there. So I'm just going to share screen very, very quickly. So some of you may or may not be aware that during the course of a lot of the complaints and people raising stuff about the campaign, some users were talking about the motherboard that they were talking about in connections with Ustar. And Ustar are, I believe, a mini PC manufacturer. We've done a couple of reviews on their products on the channel. And there was discussion about the motherboard being utilised in one of their systems and whether that was the same motherboard from Storaxa. So much so, in fact, that Ustar went ahead and issued a statement effectively saying that we firmly declare that we have never authorised any third-party seller to distribute Ustar brand products or motherboards. Again, this horrendous image up here, we're going to have to zoom in a little bit because for some reason they've gone with a PNG file that's about 4,000 pixels wide. And it's ultimately them saying they have not authorised the use of their components outside of their own authorised partners or within their own products. But not too long ago, a source at Ustar, and unfortunately I have to at least acknowledge that the source at Ustar here, I'm going to move this for the recording, the source at Ustar didn't come from an Ustar domain. It was a third-party domain, and it is a name of someone that appeared on Reddit talking on behalf of, as an Ustar insider, effectively saying that the motherboard that was being used by the manufacturer was indeed theirs. They sold it to a third party who there in turn seemingly handed it over to the Storaxa team, which again kind of brings into question whether Storaxa's design for the motherboard was even, was even their design in any shape or form. And it was little details like that that made me wonder whether, if that had come up very early on in the Kickstarter campaign, if they just volunteered and said, we didn't design the motherboard, we just bought the motherboard from someone else, whether that would have swayed people for good or for bad. I do wonder about that. I just wanted to raise that because I think it's important when we're differentiating not only Kickstarter's accountability in this, but also the way that Storaxa presented that campaign. Because if they presented this campaign as a wholly universal in-house invention, I believe Kickstarter has certain views on products that can be made available elsewhere, and campaigns have been taken down in the past from Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms if it turns out all they're doing is rebadging an existing product. But over to you, PFG Snoopy, fire away.
Well, the mainboard topic is to my eye the most important one, because if they had said we just bought it, I would have reported the campaign right away, because as you said, it's not an original product. But on the other hand, to the topic we had before, Kickstarter is not like a bank or anything where you buy a money market product, because it's more like venture capitalism. If you are a millionaire and you're funding a startup, you have no guarantees that the startup won't fail within a couple of months. You have your experience, and maybe Kickstarter should educate the backers in some way before allowing them to back. Thus, experiences like these could be avoided. But backing a campaign is like buying stocks from your bank. Your bank won't have to reimburse you if you lose your money on a stock market. They only have to reimburse you if you bought one of their money market products they designed and sold to you. So,
I mean, again, I think there's going to be arguments for and against that, and I think that is something we're going to be digging through for the next few months.
But Storaxa has stole our money.
Oh, 1 second, go ahead. I've just heard a voice in my head.
Yes, I said that. Storaxa, it's different. They have stole our money.
Again, sorry.
Be careful.
Which name
they
is
have
that?
Allegedly stolen.
Well, I don't think there's any legal recourse. I think people are entitled to their opinion. I think people are entitled to their opinion.
Absolutely.
I would be careful. Saying someone committed a crime without evidence is slander.
I think at this
say allegedly, and it's okay.
I think I understand where you're coming from, but I also think people at this time they were made promises that were not fulfilled. So I think there is an argument that if things come your way,
I don't think that we should have this meeting we should protect Storaxa. It's a meeting for our backers, and we need to talk about how we should have a solution together.
Before this descends into an argument, lads, let's keep it. Again, we're going to be talking about this for quite a while, and we'll be talking in the comments with concise efforts to pursue afterwards. But I think right now, backers disagreeing with each other in an antagonistic fashion isn't really going to help everything. Right now, this is about either or pursuing both Kickstarter and what efforts can be made to push or prompt Storaxa to do the right thing. But we'll have to wait and see. Fabian, one second. Mofi, your hand is up, but I'm not sure if your hand was up from a previous discussion or not. If you've got a point there, go ahead. But your hand was up there. I'm not sure if that was a remaining hand up from a previous question. Mofi? Okay, Fabian, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll have to go soon, but I think earlier you said you wanted to also talk about Stripe.
Well, yeah,
and after that, perhaps you could tell us about what's your great plan.
My great plan, you say?
Yeah, I mean, you want to.
Well, right now,
make sure that we have a good communication campaign, something that goes really large and wide.
Well, I think at the moment, with regards to Stripe, I think until we know whether Stripe actually was holding on to the funds or not, it's very hard to pull them in. When I did my original kind of comment on this, raising this previously. One of the points I raised was a lot of people were asking me to add Stripe into the complaint and discussion with Kickstarter. And I said I wasn't prepared to do that because I didn't have what I would argue is sufficient evidence that they really were holding on to the money. And also, if you cycle back to the comments as well, this isn't, by the way, a criticism to you or anything, but it's just when you go back to the original campaign when the Stripe issue was raised, a few users, myself included, that raised the question of, we've got no evidence of the Stripe holding the money, and that's why there is delays other than Storaxa themselves. There was so much harsh criticism back that without knowing if Stripe were indeed in any way culpable in this, beyond their own safeguards, remember, it's very hard to add them into this. The only point I was going to raise about Stripe was there are users that are kind of trying to rally against Stripe on this, and I just wanted to highlight that aside from a few mail screen grabs, there doesn't seem to be much more than that, other than potentially, I say potentially, that Storaxa or / ArrowTrack could have been using that as a delay tactic within the confines if this is a scam. But, I mean, moving forward, we'll go to that at the end of the video. But again, I'm not going to try to be some champion for justice here, but what I will say is, by the end of this, if you haven't already clicked the report button, click it. If you have social media, raise it. I've got an open letter that I've posted on my own Twitter. I recommend you use that open letter and publish it and just dominate them across the social media landscape, because really that's the best you can do. You can go to their headquarters and chuck paint at the door, but I wouldn't recommend it because I don't think it would achieve a great deal. It is really about alerting their reputation and damaging their reputation on the base of this to a point where they listen. And that's really the best recourse. Because Storaxa, if you are in Hong Kong and you want to bring this up with the Hong Kong legal, side of things, go for that. Unfortunately, I'm not there. And if that is a way to move forward with evidence, go for it. But I think the main way to get money back on this for users, or at the very least, and I hate to use the word justice, it's going to be about raising this publicly with a high public profile against Kickstarter, because they're the ones who may have been found wanting here in terms of how many checks were done, whether they should have shut down this campaign sooner, how little oversight they had on the campaign during the early 3 to 6 months. And I think
I understand, but I'm not absolutely convinced that there is a human at the end of our emails.
Oh, you're right.
When we send and hit this button, and I'm not sure that there is actually a human that reads our email, or perhaps there is one human that read one of these complaints and dismissed it.
I agree. We're probably talking.
How do we? So the question is, how do we reach top-level management?
Ultimately, it's going to be a loud campaign where they have to notice it, because as soon as it gets big enough and it's referenced enough online, I mean, you say yourself, we're probably talking to an AI. We're probably talking to some chat GPT with KS tattooed on its forehead. Ultimately, going there in person, I'm not sure the receptionist, whoever's at the desk, if someone's there in New York that wants to go to their desks and issue a letter, getting a receipt, a paper receipt from that works as well. Whatever it comes down to notable and reasonably visible, complaints. That's really the only way forward on this, because I'm not going to tell you it's perfect. I'm definitely not going to tell you that it's foolproof. But what is the alternative in the context that we're talking about here? Unfortunately, this is an e-related, an electronic transaction on a public online platform. So it has to be confined within those rules, unfortunately. And large campaigns that are visible online seem to be the only way forward. And again, I or anyone else would welcome an alternative to that. Hopefully there is one. But really, in the absence of a more formal and concrete alternative, better that than nothing, right?
Fabian, let's search the internet for mail addresses.
I mean,
a mail address of
to the board.
Pledge.
But again,
to the board.
But going for an orchestrated campaign there, you don't want to tippy toe into any kind of legal issues there. Because you're right, certainly if you can identify any of the members of the Storaxa campaign, if you can identify any of the people involved in the entire campaign, you've got to be careful to toe a line between harassment and justice, or just simple information of, we want our money back. But again, these are all things for later on that may put you in the wrong. It's sad to say, and I hate to say it, but it's true. We're not talking about public doxing or anything like that. That would be horrendous. It just comes down to what you can do that is viable, legal, justifiable, and of course public. And really, meeting those 4 criteria is very, very tough. And ultimately, arguably, if Storaxa is a scam, that is one of the ways in which they, have calculated to get away with it if it's a scam. But again, I wish I had a better answer there for you, Fabian, but I don't have a crystal ball, sadly.
Am I muted?
Mofa, you were muted earlier on. I did query you earlier
okay,
on.
I was on the wrong machine. I'm sorry.
No apology needed. Don't worry.
Regarding searching email addresses, all my research I've done on the web hit the language barrier because I don't speak Chinese. If there's anyone in the channel speaking Chinese, please join the Storaxa Discord.
Well, again, we'll definitely be leaving links to that Discord as well, because there's a lot of stuff going on there, and I don't think we're going to see the end of this investigation. I think when you're walking away with in the worst case scenario, if it is a scam, if you're walking away with a 3.4 million target on your back, you're going to be looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. But again, that's in the worst case scenario now. Francesco, fire away.
Sorry, I was searching for your open letter on your profile, but I didn't find it. Can you link it in the chat, please?
Yeah, will do. Either that or I'll just send you a link privately. Hopefully your email will still be accessible to me, but if not, I'll dump it in the chat afterwards. It's just this is being screen recorded, so it's really tough to go into my social media here. But I'll try and drop it at the end. Or if Eddie, if you're watching this, I know Eddie has to go to a Zoom with a video we're working on, so he may not be there for that. But no, I will dump that in there. Otherwise, I mean, again, the business with Ustar is something that really concerns me, actually. Because this idea that whether it was a motherboard design from a third party all along, that, to me, makes me question a lot of crowdfunding campaigns coming up. Because, again, to go back to that share screen there, where we open that bad boy up, there's, for example, this Ugreen system. That's going to be coming up, and I predict this is going to be quite a heavily pursued project. And it bears striking resemblance with Storaxa in some of it. Some of the systems are Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 6. Some of the systems are NVMe. They're using the i5 there that Kickstarter was promoting on their product. I'm not suggesting that the Ugreen product is the same, because I'm not. Ugreen is a brand that's been around for more than a decade, and they've been promoting this on everything from CES to, I believe, at IFA in Berlin. But there's going to be users that might have considered backing this legitimate project here and going, nah, you're all right, I want nothing to do with this. And then when you look at things like that ZimmerCube that I talked about as well, this is another system very, very similar in terms of that motherboard. It makes, although it's definitely not the same motherboard, because we've looked at, alternatives coming from AliExpress that are the same, there's going to be other legitimate crowdfunding campaigns that are going to be hurt by people that have just gone, well, this is all a crock. And I think Kickstarter needs to be raised to their attention. But again, that's just me just shooting off and repeating myself then. I don't really want to repeat myself at you any further. But yeah, Franco, fire away. Or not. Francesco, your hand was up. Maybe not. Never mind. Oh, do you know what, Thales? Fire away in the meantime. Go ahead.
Just to finalize this, it's very difficult to get a solution for this kind of problem. We are in a very difficult position, and there's very little that we can do, because we are against one person against the whole China. Very difficult to do something. And I don't believe that this will have any good solution at this time, until we have really a very tough law system that will oblige those people to take responsibility for what they are selling. Okay? Today, for example, if you buy something in some countries, if you buy something from the internet, you have the right to return that product, let's say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks after you receive, because you were not there at the store to see the product itself. So you can return, okay? But this is another thing also. You are buying something that is an idea, you don't know what is behind. There is no guarantee of nothing, okay? You just have the illusion that you're doing a great deal to buy something for half the price. That's the catch.
Again, I see your point there, and you know, you're right. Maybe a lot of pursuit of Kickstarter, sharing this evidence as far and wide as possible may have zero impact. But there's two, aside from the obvious outcome that nothing is achieved, there's two other outcomes. One, people actually can get something back. Again, as thin as that might sound, by Kickstarter, because it wouldn't be the first time in history that Kickstarter has had to cover the bets, so to speak, that people have done. There are examples of that in history. And two, that is to stop this happening to others as well. That was, again, the whole point of me covering this subject as a whole anyway. But also, if it stops another 5,900 people getting, frankly, screwed over, to me, that's something at least. Because, let's face it, if this is, let's go with that worst case scenario again, that this is a scam. If they've coined $3.4 million for one job, there's every possibility this will happen again. Because it's too damn lucrative. There's too many overheads. There's too much commission getting taken out of it. And even if you break it down to 5 to 6 to 7 number of people, that breaks down to enough that those people will almost certainly try it again.
That's why you need a legal framework for this.
But that's where Kickstarter comes in. And that's why petitioning Kickstarter does have value to a point. Whether it succeeds or not, no one knows. But they are ultimately the ones who can change things on this or moving forward. Everything else afterwards, it's pursuing the Storaxa team themselves. It's, obviously that can bear fruit, whether it is that they turn around and go, we're just college students and we don't know what we're doing. But they, that money, either they've spent that money in the good case scenario, they spent that money on hardware and then realised that the system's not possible and ran, or the very worst case scenario that they took the money and ran. But pursuing people has its own legal framework outside of Storaxa, and I think people are going to do that anyway. So why not do both? But far away, PFG Snoopy, far away.
I think we need to let go of the idea of buying something on Kickstarter. We are not buying anything. It's like venture capitalism. We invest in an idea, and if this idea pays off, we get a reward. Venture capitalism gets a percentage of the company. We get a device or some kind of their product. That's all. We are providing seed money, and we are buying nothing on Kickstarter. And I think Kickstarter has to do a better job of educating the prospective backers in exactly that. We are entitled to a reward if the project works out. If it doesn't work out, we are entitled to nothing. The problem is that we as backers can't make the decision if this is a failed campaign that didn't work out or if we got scammed. If we got scammed, you can bet your house on the fact that they are already on Kickstarter under another name with another campaign and scamming again. As you said, it's too lucrative to not do it.
And again, but to me, again, not to disagree with you, because I actually agree with everything you just said there for the most part, but I will say that I do still think there is sufficient potential gains to make as much noise as this to Kickstarter, because you're right, whether it is that we go, look, this is everything that happened in Storaxa, these are all the checks you did not do, and this is us knobbers on the internet that managed to find this information out. Why did we find this out? And ultimately that's the best we can do, I think, with regards to Kickstarter. But yeah, I'm far away. Johannes.
Yes, many of the speakers have said that from the beginning, this was it was too cheap to be achieved.
Too good to be true, yeah.
Yes, it was too good to be true. But then Kickstarter has a very big responsible, because they first checking the project so that everything will be all right. The red flags should also be flying in the eyes of the Kickstarter company, because I am a private person that I cannot these prices. I don't know if it is cheap or not. I think it was a good product that I needed. So if you are the experts, if you say red flags, I also see that Kickstarter should see red flags.
Again, I think it will be interesting to see how Kickstarter responds to a mass campaign. We're going to wrap this Zoom up in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So if you do have anything you'd like to raise, go ahead. But Francesco, fire away.
I understand the point that about venture capital, but with this metaphor, with this comparison, there is a problem. The venture capitalists collect all the data, business plan, all the information before investing. This is something that Kickstarter does on our behalf. So we are putting their commission is to keep up the platform and to do this kind of thing for us. I obviously they can make mistake. No company is perfect, but if you don't even try to do those things, because if a common user can find the problem, the missing address, how can you do Kickstarter, that is your job, not have seen this? And it's like you said, Snoopy said, the bank sells you a stock, but the bank has to check if the stock even exists. The bank cannot allow me to buy a stock that doesn't exist, because the bank checks the stock market to see if the stock is listed, what is the price.
Yes.
Kickstarter, I should have done this,
Yes.
they didn't.
Exactly.
Is this is the problem? And
Yes.
also I agree with who said that we need a legal framework.
That was Thales,
The,
yeah.
a legal framework is the root of all internet problems, because internet is faster than the law and always find a way to do things outside or with only similar legal framework. But at this point in time, crowdfunding exists from many years. So I don't personally. I don't expect to recoup the money. If I recoup it, I am happy, of course. But this should should give us the opportunity to raise the issue on a broader level and on a higher scale to to suggest that this thing should have a legal framework. Because if we say yes, we got nothing, move on. We never even try to fix things. I understand that trusting people on the internet is inherently a risk, but if we don't trust anyone, we can do almost nothing.
It's catch-22, you're right, yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think, as I say, this is probably going to be the last video that I make on the subject of Storaxa, or at least covering updates. And from this, because one of the major other issues with, I mean, we're going to try to, you know, put together this kind of big social noise towards Kickstarter for, you know, whatever can be done there. But I will say one of the other inherent difficulties, I think, with users that are trying to pursue Storaxa or ArrowTrack Group is they are watching. For all I know, Storaxa is watching this video now. They're watching this live, or they're watching the video when it goes out on YouTube there. And if you are going to try to pursue them, if you are looking, you know, to get more information on that, that is very much the opposite of what's going on with loudly alerting, or not even alerting, but, you know, getting responsibility at the door of Kickstarter. Any kind of pursuit of Storaxa or ArrowTrack to find out more information about the state of this campaign, I think a lot of that is going to have to, if not be done behind closed doors, and at the very least done with a slight nod and a wink, if that makes sense. I mean, ultimately, between anyone here, I mean, Francesco, your hand is still raised there, so I'm assuming that was from your previous point. But if anyone else has got another point they'd like to raise, we might wrap things up. We good? Okay, well, if you are watching this in the future and you're thinking about backing a crowdfunded campaign, I hope this has been useful to you. I think I know what you're going to do. If you've watched this far, there's absolutely no way you're backing that campaign. And, you know, you've taken the information here on board. Maybe you're watching this in the future and, you know, the Storaxa came out. Not sure that's going to happen, unfortunately, which is a real shame and super annoying, but nevertheless. But you know, hopefully more comes of this, and, you know, hopefully we'll do a video on this very subject in the future that will, you know, tell a very different tale. But apart from that, thank you so much everyone for attending today and sort of sharing your input on this. Again, this isn't a subject that's going away, at least on the forums and on the blog, but maybe on YouTube here we may step away from it for a little while. But thanks again for joining us here in the chat. If you do want to learn more, my email robbie@nascompares.com. I'll be putting together some other resources and some other bits and bobs that I might have found out I can't publish on the Kickstarter comments, and then hopefully we can get the ball rolling on Reddit or on that Discord, a kind of concerted joined effort to sort of raise the profile of this in front of Kickstarter and hopefully get in front of a human. But apart from that, cheers for joining the chat today, everyone. I hope this done something, you know, something small, who knows. But thank you so much and have yourselves a fantastic day, and thanks for joining us whatever time of the day it is over there. But cheers. See you later, guys.